it's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just... Sometimes it's like there's this achy... I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. Ow. If you would just...
Don't...
Well, honestly, this is not the first time, but it's already the second time I'm attending Isaac's program for leadership. Personally, it always amazes me because he always has some very, very good some activities for us to learn, and we're able to apply in our daily job. The coolest thing about Isaac is he's a great listener. So everything that we say, or sometimes you even observe our unsaid word. From our body language, he said, "Oh, is everything okay?" So I do feel that he's not just deliver a program, he genuinely cares for us to be a leaders. So Isaac, thank you very much.
I got excited and I stayed muted for a while. Hi, this is Mallar from Hearts&Minds Development Center. Welcome, join us in Being Whole, Being Me. As you would have seen, we are going to bring a man who is able to deal with a woman who has a nail right on her forehead. Let's put him to test without much delay in time. Let's bring in Isaac Peter, I don't know whether I should call him my good friend. Let's see whether we stay as friends after today's session. Hi, Isaac.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I am good. I am anxious, but I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much, man. Today is a good day. This morning I was doing Grab driving for my wife, sending out her cakes. So yeah.
Sending out her cakes.
Yes, she does pineapple tart and cakes. So yeah.
I heard kids. So I was thinking, how come her kids are not your kids?
And we have this thing where my daughter will go, your wife is talking to you. So we have a very interesting relationship at home.
Nice. So welcome. Thank you for saying yes to what I think it's a very interesting topic. I've known Isaac. Isaac, I don't know how long I know you. Like, I feel like I don't know you. I feel like I've also known you forever.
2017, I think. 2016, 2017, I think. Yeah.
So long, Okay. So I know Louis longer. Hi, Louis. Thanks for coming in. Louis is a very, very good friend from the past for more than 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So he has seen me grow up, literally speaking. Hi, Nate. So very happy to welcome and have Isaac Peter. So, Isaac says we met in Alia is here. I need you, Alia. In 2017, I have no idea, Alia. So you see, I don't remember when I met people. All I know is that when I met Isaac, I never liked him.
Yes, that was an interesting love-hate relationship, right?
No hate lah. I didn't like you lah. That's all. Like, you meet this prim and proper guy who is like so cool all the time, almost cold. I didn't know how to hack a friendship with you, but I must say, and then we got together with OD Network, still didn't warm up to him, but believed in his purpose. Had a bit of time working together. Didn't like him either, but I must say that I've been privileged to tap into Isaac's mind, which is a little bit different. Because what you see, the calm Isaac, is not the Isaac who puts out, and which is why today we are going to talk about what does it mean to being a man in current times, right? Isaac, I had put up a poll.
Right. Yeah.
And
Okay.
I'm not too sure whether you saw the results of the poll, right? So the results of the poll
No.
was
Share. Do share. I can't seem to see it on my side.
okay, we need to see whether we can share it a little bit later. But let me maybe just tell you the results of the poll. The
Okay.
poll put up. Hi, Vijay, Kumar, Victor. Thanks for joining us. So we put up a poll to say, what does it mean to be a man in today's world, right? And whether people felt or men felt whether they had the skills, right? So we have the skills. 26% say they had the skills. We need to relearn. 15% say they had to relearn. So men generally don't want to learn according to this
Wait.
poll.
Relearn on how to be a man.
Yes, being a man in current times, do you have to shift?
Okay.
They said no need lah. All right, 15% said, only 15% said we need to relearn. Now, this is what I loved. 52% said we need to co-create together.
All right.
Now, obviously, you see me slowing down. I'm very biased towards the third one, which is 57%. Right? Okay, so tell me very, very quickly first, for people who don't know you, Isaac, and because I know you are low profile, introverted, you want people to tell you you're good, you don't like to tell you're good. Tell us the space that you're working at.
So, yeah. So it's interesting. I enjoy people, but at the same time, I don't enjoy people, right? So currently, I'm in a space where I work very much in the corporate settings, working with leaders. And you know what's interesting when we talk even about being a man or being a leader, it all starts with how we view ourselves. So I find it very privileged in terms of being able to work with leaders, to be able to first be a mirror and for them to really see who they are, and from there come across in terms of what is it that really matters most. I think the Asian way of learning is always about right answers, and I find it's creating a lot more issues. So I work very much in the corporate space right now. When friends do come and have conversation, I do talk to them, and usually we explore the area of values and beliefs. And values and beliefs it's a very deep area where it requires a lot of reflection. Hi, Dato Alia. Yes, I know many people don't like me. It's fine. Part of it is learning to accept who you are.
So
Yeah.
Isaac, if since we seem to have this thing that many people don't like Isaac until they have a meal with him. I had a meal with him. I'm not too sure whether I'd liked him after that, but I certainly have a lot of love and respect for you after having the conversation where you really listen, and that's what I realized. So I had to break through that to like you better, basically, Isaac. Now, tell me, when you say, I like the part that say you work in the leadership space, and of course you bring leadership with behavior. I don't think they can be separated.
Yeah, I think you have to look at two parts, right? First, leadership is leadership. Behavior applies to everyone. Leadership is just a context. So I think if we start from the angle of we are all humans first, I think it makes a lot of difference. And one of the things that when I work with people, especially with leaders, I always say observe behaviors, not listen to what people say, but observe behaviors, because we say a lot of things. Most of the time we don't really mean it, but it just sounds nice, right? So as leaders, you really need to observe behaviors yourself and others. And there's a lot of conversations on leadership. I think for me, what really makes a person a leader is the willingness to take risks. I think that's perhaps the biggest part of it. Not so much about empathy. If you think about it, right, empathy is a skill. Every one of us needs it. but taking risk, it's not something everybody does. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Sorry, I'm the video was like, I don't know whether it's your side. Empathy is everything. You said everyone must have it, right?
So, for example, I mean, in today's context, so we talk about today's time, right? We there's a lot of focus on empathy as part of leadership. But if you think about it, empathy is just being human, right? So we are all so empathy is something not unique to leadership, but the willingness to take risk, I believe, is more connected with leadership. When we talk about risk, usually it's talking about doing something different or doing something unpopular. Yeah. So to me, I think that's the distinction for me.
Interesting. I'm thinking about empathy and taking risks in my own head. But before that, Alia is giving you too many compliments. I cannot take it already. You know, she said she had 2 meals with you and had a lot to chew, and she likes you. Oh my God, Alia likes you. You know, that's like not an easy space, right? And then she says, haha, Cheryl, no lah, cause initially to many people, to many people, he's quite intimidating. Uh,
Mm.
so that says a lot about you, lah, Isaac. Okay, enough
Yeah.
promotion for you. So tell me, when we think about Isaac as a man, who who are you? Because you did say,
Yeah.
two things: who am I and what matters. So tell us, who are you as a man? Because we're
All right.
talking about being a man today,
All
and
right.
what matters most to you.
Okay, so I'm going to share with who is Isaac first. And I
Sure.
share with you, when we talk about a man, I talk in terms from a role perspective, right? So who's Isaac is I am my values. So my values is about considerate. My values is about respect, and my values is about transparency. So one of the things, so for example, when a person connects with me, I can be quite transparent on the first conversation, and I find most people gets a, gets very cautious with me when I open up very fast because it's not common for people to do that. In many societies, pleasantries and niceness is the first thing, and we evaluate people based on that. So you ask me who's Isaac, for me it's about being transparent, being real, uh, stands out first. So and I think that's what many people who is connected with me will say. Yeah, that's it. I do share that. Now, in terms of being a man, so there's this, and once again, I think it's related to what we're talking today. So for me, being a man is a role that I play. Just like when I'm in my in-laws' place, I behave differently compared to when I'm in my parents' place, compared to when I'm home. I do have different behaviors because it fits a particular role. Yeah. So when you talk about being a man, I think for me, being a man is about protecting the loved ones. I think that's critical. I think being a man also talks about not just protecting about uh, displaying love, but once again, I think the concept of love today has a lot more to do with emotions rather than a sense of responsibility and commitment. Yeah.
And
So
which is your definition of love?
So, my definition of love is one that is protective. So when I say protect, it doesn't mean like the mother hen covers. It means protecting in terms of preparing my loved ones. So, for example, with my wife, she is a very detailed. She's very risk adverse. So there are times I would need to purposely push her out to do things, and to me that's love. Preparing her, developing her. So to me, that's love. Likewise, the same my daughter. So to me, but that's for me. So love, there is an emotional component, and I know emotion. I can feel emotion. At the same time, I'm very comfortable being detached from emotion. So yeah,
So you feel emotions, you have them, but you
I
can
do, I
also
do, I do.
choose not to feel them. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I can choose not to feel them. I can choose to mimic them. I can choose to uh, to put it on. So, for example, you know me, I don't get very excited often, right? But when I grew up people and somebody shares me good news, obviously, if I just look at them, they will feel like this guy's not connecting. So I would need to like, oh my goodness, amazing. So I would need to do that because I'm very aware of my emotions. Yeah, can be quite scary though.
Yeah, I've not seen you display emotions yet, though, in our conversations, but I've heard emotions in your voice at least, right? But never
Yeah.
mind. So, very nice. Luis Moraes is trying to support you. I think he said, so girls, is that we have a collective perception about Isaac. You girls are ganging up. No, no, we're not ganging up. If you realize, Alia has got very nice things to say about Isaac. Not everybody else has nice things to say about Isaac. Okay, Mala doesn't have so many nice things to say about Isaac. So I like the fact that you say, being a man means for you to be protective, and then you said it's about love, and love for you is more than emotions. It's more than just expressing emotions in the way that we're talking about, but you're talking about being committed and being responsible
Yeah.
towards.
To the individual. So one of my challenge is I can be quite aloof, but at the same time I'm committed to getting things done. And also in terms of meeting their emotional needs. So while love is an emotion, and I talk a lot about being detached, I'm very aware of the emotional need of the person. So for example, um, my wife and I recently had conversations, and she said, one of the things I appreciate you of late is you are doing the small things, bringing me the aircon remote, turning on the fan for me while watching TV. And we had this very interesting conversation where I do things like that because I know it makes emotional sense for her. To me, it's like, okay, I'm doing a help. So I think when we talk about love, it's really about understanding the emotion. But understanding the emotion doesn't mean I have to be fully immersed in it. I'm not sure whether that makes sense.
It sounds like you experience emotion at a cognitive level.
That's a very nice way of putting it. Yeah.
No, because empathy has got two types of empathy, right? So now it's making sense, right? It's not difficult to empathize at a cognitive level. That means I understand how I'm supposed to feel and
Yeah.
how the other person is supposed to feel, but I don't feel it in my body. So when we talk about emotion, we're talking about feeling in your body, because
Mm.
feeling in your body, when you feel empathy in your body, when you feel joy, you feel a lot light, excited, and when you're experiencing the so-called negative emotion, it can be the pain and pleasure is in the body.
True. Let me just share a story which is slightly away from this, because I was back in Malacca, my mom's place, and she basically passed me a stack of photo from my uni days. And one of the photo was me and my team, tennis team, right? And I remember vividly, it was my year one in UTM. We It was a tennis match. So there was 5 games, three singles and two doubles. So I was playing doubles, and it was draw 2-2. So it was my game that was going to determine whether we win or lose. So my partner, his name is Raghu. He was 3 years my senior. We were playing, and in our match, we were like 3 points down. That means if the opponent wins, they win, but we need to do 4 points in order to catch up. And I remembered when we won, he was jumping for joy, and I merely went to the net, shake my opponent's hand, and said, "Thank you very much," and I walked off. There wasn't any like, "Woohoo, we won" kind of thing, right? So, when I reflect on some of these things, it was quite interesting. For me, happiness resides within. So I will feel a sensation, a burning sensation inside when there's love or when there's happiness, but you don't see on the physical part of it.
So what happens is that there's a disconnect from the body to the face, is it?
There is a disconnect from the emotion to the body. So I experience both.
I think we need a separate conversation on the science of emotion and the body connection. All right. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think we need to have a different conversation, because I'm trying to get to that. All right, so tell me, so you're very clear as a man, and you already have some supporters here. Nate Kumar was my friend, saying, can I have the manual, please?
Woo! Oh, the
Make
man say yes.
Yeah, I don't know what sense he's making, Nate. You better put it down, what sense he's making. I want to actually ask you, what's your love language, Isaac?
Wow, so that was a conversation we had recently. So my love language is um, help, right?
Service.
Service, act of service.
So your
And my wife
love,
was,
ah,
pardon?
And your wife?
So we had this conversation where she said, but sometimes I help you, you don't appreciate it. And we had this dialogue where I said, yes, the help that I appreciate is the help that I need, not what you think I need. So one of the things that our when we first got married, this is our 18th year, right? And the
Wow.
first couple of years was very difficult because we both have our own understanding of what a man should be, what a woman should be, more like what a husband and wife should be. And I think over the years we had our ups and downs. In fact, I mean, we did. I think for those couples who have relationship issue, I think meeting a marriage counselor helps. We did go through that period one time. And what over the last couple of years, what really helped was having transparent, open conversation. One of the biggest challenge, especially in our Asian culture, is this whole idea of don't offend the other person, so we keep quiet. But throughout our journey, I think it came to a point where we were able to open conversation, and therefore it was easy for me to tell her that, when you do something for me which you think is helpful, you need to at least check in with me whether I want it. If you do it and I don't appreciate it, I don't perceive it as act of service. I perceive it as interference. Then it kind of like got to her like, oh, okay, I understand what you mean. Because for her, helping means if I help you, you should appreciate. And most of us tend to feel like we know what the other person needs without actually asking the person. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is that your love language is service, but service doesn't mean that anything that you give is actually considered service for me, right?
Exactly. That's
It
right.
is like, I mean, in customer service, we talk about it, right? If I don't need help and you open the door, I'm not going to appreciate it and when I don't appreciate it, it's not going to show up in terms of my emotions and my response to you. And then you're going to think that I don't appreciate you. So it's really, at the end of the day, beyond the love language is the communication as to what form it takes for you and what it means in your world is what you're saying.
Yeah, that and I thought that's so right. I mean, okay, so the love language is good in the sense that it gives you visual something that which is tangible for you to act on. So act of service, we talk tangible. But I think one of the things that we need to be a lot clearer is that every action and every word is attached to a particular meaning. So it's not about meaning making, right? Human beings, we are meaning making creation. So I may do it. So, for example, opening the door to a lady, to one lady, it could be, you are being a gentleman. To another lady, it could be, do you think I'm not capable of opening my own door?
Exactly.
Right? So it's about the meaning behind the action rather than the meaning itself. So once again, you talk about acts of service. So for me, it's act of service. It's not so much. So we had this conversation about physical touch, right? So sometimes she'll come and she will give me a background, a massage when I'm doing my work, and she says, "But isn't that physical touch?" I said, "No, actually, for me that was act of service because I appreciate that. But maybe to you, it is physical touch." So even when we talk about love languages, it's always very important to clarify with the person, when I'm doing this, how do you interpret it? Do you interpret it as act of service or do you interpret it as physical touch? Yeah. So the focus has always been on the meaning. Unfortunately, from an education perspective or training, we tend to focus on the tangible because that's the easiest to read.
Yeah, but the whole idea is really to know the form it takes, right, and what it means, and that's I mean, like what you said, right? What
Yeah.
really matters to that person, right? And we can use a particular word, but what does it mean in my world? And
That's
for
right.
you and I to bridge that world, we need to communicate. And that's essential, right? So now let's go back to the topic of, now we've covered emotion, we've covered love language. I
Everything.
don't hijack my conversation now. Tell
Sorry.
me, tell me, right? What that so when we talk about being a man in current times, right? You said it's about being a protector. You said it's about loving, showing responsibility and commitment, right? Now, has this evolved for you as you grew up? Has it changed for you, or have you always been this way, very clear? I'm the protector, and I give love in terms of showing commitment and responsibility. Tell
Wow,
me.
that's like a 1 year series of sharing lah. But to put it short, okay, so I'm the eldest of four boys. So, and I was very much taken care of growing up. So for me, I grew up in a loving family where my dad and my mom, um, I would say it's a very high functioning family, though we have our idiosyncrasies. So for me, I've never had to take the lead. though people always say first child tends to be the most independent, it wasn't much for me because everybody was going on well, and my mom and my dad was very involved. So I was just being myself, and there wasn't a direction that, oh, you must lead, you need to help, and that all of us do the house cleaning, all of us are involved doing everything, right? So I will wash toilets and stuff like that. Now, growing up in a church setting, the whole idea in terms of it's about self, it's about helping people. So that was my upbringing. But because of my personality, I tend to have this concept of you want to help people, but people need to be able to say what they need help in. So I found myself in many situations just waiting. If people need help, then they need to express, then I help. I'm not the one who will just jump in and start doing it, because I think back then I have a lot of self-esteem issues. So growing up, one of the things I do tell people, I grew up with a lot of self-esteem issue because I felt I wasn't good enough. And because of that, I tend to be more reactive than proactive. So that was there. And and one of the things that one of the mental programming was, there's no such, especially in decision making, is it's always about matter of preference. So when I got married, or when we got married to each other, and my wife is a bit more dominant, so she has a bit more of a dominant streak, and I'm more the easygoing. And in my mind, making her happy is about going with her preferences rather than mine, because I'm very chincai. I can go with anything. I have no issue. She has more peculiarities, considering she comes from Singapore. But anyway, that's a different issue, right? So so she has a lot more peculiarities, a lot more um, opinions on things. Whereas for me, it's like anything goes, like, as long as both are okay with it. And at the first couple of years marriage, I thought, all right. I mean, if I were to go with her decision, she would be happier. And I thought, that my job. I thought my job was to make her happy.
Mm.
So there's a difference between being protective and making a person happy. But as we got into our fights, and then eventually we met a counselor, I realized me giving into her wants created insecurity, because she grew up in a church setting where the message has always been the man leads. So if the man leads, and this is me going with whatever she wants, the meaning is this guy doesn't have an idea of where he's going. He's just going whatever I want. So it created insecurity in her, which I was not aware of. And through my own, I think through the whole journey itself, through the counseling and through working with people, and starting to discover a bit more myself, I started to realize that I needed to step up in terms of to be a bit more directive, a bit more assertive, because that's what she needs. So I went through a process where I need to be comfortable with argument. So I was always fearful of conflict. I needed to come to a point where I needed to purposely win argument as a way to send a signal that this guy knows what he wants. So so I started evolving in this whole journey, and after every fight, I feel extremely lousy, because I'm a peacemaker. So if you look at this personality, I'm a peacemaker, and peacemaker doesn't like to fight. So I started doing that, and then I started to be a bit more assertive in terms of saying I want it my way. And in my mind, it was like, Isaac, you are being selfish. But and the external, I'm constantly reminded that my role as the husband is to provide a sense of security emotionally. So that happened for a few years, and I would say today she's a lot more comfortable in terms of me taking the lead in that sense. So it was a uphill journey, especially for someone who's very laid back to having to be assertive. Yeah.
I am confused.
Please elaborate. On what aspect?
Yeah, no, no. So it's very. I think I loved it when you said you thought your job was to make her happy, right? I just like, oh really? There are men like that still, but never mind. We'll park that aside. And
I think
also
I'm going to
love-
get haters after this.
what's that?
I think I'm going to get haters after this. What? So aren't men supposed to make women happy?
Yeah, but I was I like I. So I've not met men who enough men. I don't know. Like when you told me, it's like, oh, there are men who want to make women happy. So that's what came to my mind. But no, I'm going to park it aside. So I thought it was very funny. Number one. Number two is I actually love the fact that you're saying that when it came to your wife and you realized that she needed security, and that's really interesting, isn't it, about women? Right, on one hand we want you to be all gentlemen, and then the next moment we expect you to be the protector. And I'm not sure whether as women we're communicating that well enough, right? That why, because what's coming to me is this, right? Like, because as women empowerment is out there, we're independent, we can do anything without men except have a baby, I think. But never mind, that's another subject altogether. I mean, we are going into this space that I don't need you, right? For the women, I can say that because I'm one, right? I don't need you. I can make my own money. I can look after myself. I can protect myself. I just go to a condominium. I make sure there's a security and all of that. And what you're saying is that, hey, my wife who's dominant was all of that. But then I found out that she still needed me, to behave in a particular way for her to feel secure. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, and it comes from her belief system, right? So, for example, especially in the Asian community, or in some communities, or in some religion, or in some upbringing, there's always this sense that the man needs to lead. And if we buy into that programming, then the expectation would be my husband needs to lead. Now, once again, the whole idea of action, the activities or the behaviors, and the meaning behind it. So, in my context, the behavior of not making a stand is being perceived as not able to lead. Now, I'm not saying this applies to everyone, but
Yes.
it drives the message that conversation has to be more frequent. I think one of the biggest challenge in this part of the world is growing up, we were never taught to communicate and articulate. Right. And I think, and a lot of frustration. And I mean, I work with leaders, and one of the biggest frustration leaders have is when their young executives ask why, and the leader don't know how to articulate and they get frustrated. So the ability to communicate is critical in anything because it helps both parties to understand the why behind the what. Right?
So interesting, right? So I say, am I like hearing you right? What you're saying is that there is a generational role or a traditional role that we are all accustomed to, which we have passed it on to men. You're the protector. You give and you love, but the way a man loves and the way a woman shows love could be different, and that's traditionally. And what you're saying now is that being a man in current times means checking to see what it means in the other person's world.
That's right. You are spot on that, in the sense that I think in the past the idea of a man is the caveman pulling the woman by the hair kind of thing. That was the old model, because in the past if I were to put it from a educational perspective, in the past men received more education than women, because back then it was more men. But in today, when we talk from an education perspective, both are equal, and therefore the level of conversation, the degree of conversation has to be a lot higher. Now, a man asking, and I had these things also because my dad is a military man, so he doesn't really ask a lot. So that was my initial model. So the idea of protection in the initial days for me is for the man to do things for the woman. But in today's context, it's not so, because women, when we talk about, I would say, having the equal exposure, I'll use the word exposure, they have similar inputs as men. But it doesn't mean that, they are fully men, right? This whole idea of women empowerment, which we have, is because the failure of a man to step up in the first place, women felt the need to step up. So let me ask your audience, right? If today, as a lady, you feel safe with your man, you feel that you are taken care, you feel that this man really wants the best for me, do you feel the need to really want to be equal?
So you're asking the audience, while the
Yeah.
audience are answering, audience all answer, all the women, Alia, Cheryl.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
But
today, let me put it again. So today, if your man is to be able to make you feel safe, your man is able to give you a sense of direction, your man is able to you feel that he wants the best for you. Like, if that is the man you have today, do you feel a need to really step up to be as equal as him?
Can I pause you there? When you say
Sure.
your man, do you mean a romantic partner, a partner? Is that what
Okay,
you
so
mean by
yes, in
romantic?
this context, a husband and wife context, right? So there
Right.
is a difference. The contract between a husband and wife and the contract between just say a boyfriend girlfriend is very different. So there's
Okay.
this psychological contract that we do.
Sure. But before we even go into the man-woman relationship, right? Is really because what you're saying is that so in a and a lot of people may are also choosing to stay single. So I want to take it a little bit more broader in that sense. So two
Hmm.
things. I love the part that you said our roles are changing, education has changed. So, for me, what I'm getting from you is that the idea of protection is changing because I think in the past women may have needed the men to have physical safety because the world was not physically safe. I can't just go out, in the past, right? Right today, in some places, is safer but
Yeah.
whether we like it or not, physically, men are stronger. So we may not be still as safe if we don't live in a civil society. So number one. Number two, when it
Hmm.
comes to education, I mean, in the space of Malaysia, 70% of our university graduates are female women, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say, oh, if you have a degree, you're more educated. But the fact remains is that if you get a degree, your exposure to thinking and education is greater. Now, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So now
Okay, let me just
we're
let me
going to
just add
have,
to that. Yeah? If I
sorry.
can just add to that to the education part, because it's a favorite topic of mine. If you look at it, education provides structured thinking. So it
Mm,
doesn't say that you are better. It just provides you structured thinking,
sure,
right?
sure.
So if you look at education, for example, like when I talk to friends, vocational diploma, degree, and I do question why do companies hire degree holders? If you just need somebody to just copy and paste, a diploma holder guy would be able to do the job because a
Mm,
degree trains you to be structured in critical thinking. A diploma level, it trains you to be able to apply. So once again, we do need to ask ourselves what is the value of education, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry to
Because
interrupt on this part.
no, 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 that's a good one. Feel free. I mean, we know you always want to win arguments nowadays. Now we know you are not the peacemaker anymore. So go ahead. But so I said, so my concern is this, right? Even in the past, when men were more educated than women, men were also known to have 50% of vocabulary and total number of words. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. So
Yeah.
men were already speaking on budget and in communication language and communication and articulation, you need words, right? So
Yes.
we already have this gender issue where women have more words to say than
Yeah.
men traditionally, right? Number one. Number two, now women are becoming more educated, which means that our ability to articulate our needs and being independent,
Yeah.
psychological safety, we are feeling a lot more safer because we are a lot more independent. Now, don't
Yeah.
you think this is going to actually widen the gap of communication between the men and women in today's world?
Okay. So as usual, I will say the answer it depends, right?
Yeah, of
Because
course.
yeah. So the thing is this.
You're a
Let me just
musician consultant.
okay. So once again, if you look at it, why men had higher prominence back in those days is because the nature of work was very physical. And
Hmm.
it wasn't a situation back then where men say, "Oh, I'm better than you." It was a progress. It was a natural progression because from a behavioral perspective, right? As you do more, and it was this physical job, and you get paid for it. Then the assumption is, you matter more, and that was what's happening then. In
Mm,
today's context, it doesn't, right? Because we can do almost equal jobs because of automation and stuff like that. Now, so that's from the behavioral perspective. What you are talking about, people say going singles and all, it could be a few reasons. Firstly, a sense of the idea of a relationship is restrictive. So some people have the idea the minute I get into a relationship is restrictive because I have to compromise. Now, whether it's compromise or whether it's a change of roles really depends on the conversation and the couple itself. Now, where I'm coming from is this. So a lot of my beliefs are influenced from Christianity or religion wise, where we look in terms of what's our purpose on earth. And if you look at it, one of the purposes on earth is procreation. Unfortunately, that is being perceived very negatively in today's context, right? Women are supposed to give birth. Unfortunately, the perception is that. But if we are able to come from a role perspective, so what do I mean by role perspective? When I'm a man, like when I'm a father compared to when I'm a husband, I have different priorities. As a husband, it is to love my wife. As a father, it is to prepare my child. So very different job descriptions. So when we go into that, if you are able to accept that, then what happens is when we come into a marriage, which is a unit by itself, then there's a recontract about, hey, how do we work together, right? And unfortunately, I've never seen a ship with two captains. There will always be one. So when we talk about co-create, now conceptually, I agree with co-create, but decision maker usually has to be one.
Sorry,
Uh,
decision maker has to be one. Does it have to be the man?
It doesn't have to be, but once again, it depends on conversation. In some relationship, the woman is very comfortable making decision, and the man is okay with the woman. Now, in that sense, unfortunately, in our culture, we tend to joke in the sense that she wears the pants. But think about it: the reference that we say she wear the pants is reference of a male. If you think from a association perspective, right? So what are we saying is the what we call the head of the house, right? While we historically we call male, in today's context could be a female. But if it is a female, then the male has to be comfortable with the idea of supporting her, though they still come together in decision making.
Yeah, you're still coming to it depends, but let me hold
Yeah.
you on, hang on there first, right?
Hmm.
So what I'm hearing from you, and so my thing is this, right? I think if we look at roles, some roles as men and women cannot change. Like, I mean, women need to give birth, full stop, and it's a privilege for me. I love being a woman, so like it's really, I mean, how you look at it. And if there are women who are, who are choosing otherwise, they have their reasons, and it's got a lot of the past, right, and how they've been treated and stuff like that, and we can't go into it, right? But what I'm hearing from you is that what is really important is that you need to be clear about your identity as to who you are, and which means that, and when you communicate, it doesn't make one gender, if you're talking about gender roles, greater than the other, right? And
Hmm.
because situations have changed today, what we're doing is that we are looking at roles differently. And I think uh, in terms of belief, right, we associate our value to the roles. And I think
Yes.
that's the danger. Values in the sense that if I make more money, I'm more
Yeah.
important. I
Yeah.
am right. And you make more money because you had the right education, you have the right job, and whatever not, right? So I think it is really how you see co-creation in whatever spaces, not just in marriage. Because I think in the past, for me personally, the reason probably, I was very interested in a career is because that's the only way I can be empowered and be independent from a man's mercy, right? and
Yeah.
and that doesn't, yeah, and that does not come from my husband, right? So, and that's the other point that I wanted to make. So two things, right, from what you're saying is that, look at your roles, look at, what is the agreement and contract in the role, all right?
Yeah.
And make sure you're comfortable, right? And there's also this feminine masculine role that we play, right? We have both, right? And for a man who's comfortable with his feminine side, right, to
Yeah.
be able to shift and transition in more female oriented roles may not be difficult because it doesn't affect his identity and esteem.
Agreed. And as you shared that, what comes to mind is to be a man is to be secure, right? So
Mm.
so what I mean by being secure, meaning he doesn't need to prove himself. A lot of the negativity towards the man is because a man is trying to prove he's a man. So so he tries to show that he's masculine. He's trying to show that he's right, And that is not being a man. So when we talk about being a man, it's about being secure in his own skin, and also being very clear with his role. If his role is to love, and he needs to do it. And this is where sometimes, in today's context, where what we call social validation is becoming very high, it can get very scary, right? Because being secure means you need to be able to say, even if the world says no, I will still do it. That is security. Yeah.
Nice, nice. So, I mean, I think the whole idea is it brings us back to communication, because how we probably expressed and communicated in the past as a male or a female is very different, and that has transitioned over time. And right now, we need to now be very clear about first our identity. So it doesn't matter whether I'm making the decision, or I'm bringing in the money, or I'm washing dishes, right, at home. What
Yep.
It means is that, do I know why I do what I do, and how do I feel about myself, and is it meeting the contract that we've got into? And for us to do all of this, we need to talk about it. That's
Agreed.
what.
And yeah, and I think that's a very good point. It's not just about communication; it's continuous communication, right? Because the contract between the couples changes over time,
Yeah.
right? So it's not just one. It's like the joke of a husband telling the wife, over at the marriage shelter, and say, "I love you," and then they're not saying it again for the next 10 years. It doesn't work. You have to constantly reiterate, because humans are forgetful. You need to constantly check in. So checking in is about, just making sure, are we still in the same direction? Are we still having the same expectation? So I think if I can define it in today's context, being a man means he needs to initiate the conversation.
That's like so not being a man.
Once
So
again,
initial conversation, yeah.
exactly,
But
because
yeah,
So, for
yeah,
example, in unfortunately, roles and gender used to be mutually exclusive in the past,
right.
because anything physical is man. Man goes make the money, and you have no choice, because that is it. But in today's context, that's no more true. But we still tend to associate gender with roles. So, and this can, yeah. So what I'm saying is, the role of a man is a person who is secure. So if a person is insecure, while he may be genderly a male, he may not be behaving in a role that is required of a man.
So if you say the role of a man is to be secure, what's your perception of the role of a woman?
No, okay. So for me, and this is just my belief,
Sure.
is, if I read the Bible, you notice that talk about the man being is more headish, they are more cognitive. Women tend to be more emotion. So what I derive from that is, if I were to say both are captains, the woman is the captain of emotion in the family. Once again, I'm just bringing out the family because easier as a unit, whereas the man is about planning and thinking ahead. Right now, so that is in general. So for me, the role of the woman, if I were to say,
Traditionally.
this is going to sound wrong, or going to sound a bit weird. So the role of the woman is to love the man, and to provide the emotion in the relationship
For the man.
for them.
Okay. I'm not too sure whether that's sitting down with me. Hold on. It's almost Adam and Eve, right? The Eve was there to support Adam. Be the
The
helper.
helpmate, right? Unfortunately,
Yeah,
the word helpmate is being perceived negatively. If you think about it, right? So once again, the challenge is because the fallen nature of man. If a man is supposed to behave the way the man is supposed to behave, then being a helpmate is a privilege rather than a limitation. But the challenge happens is when the man falls or does not perform what he does. That's where the women feel taken advantage of, and the need to rise up. So that I would think that would be the basis, or the prelude to women empowerment.
Okay, I'm just going to say something naughty here, because whether we like it or not, right? You can say man is a protector, and Adam did whatever he did, and Eve was the helper, right? But it was Eve who actually convinced Adam to eat the apple. So
There you go.
and the rest is history, because
And you know what Adam said? She did it, right? he didn't take ownership in the sense that saying, yes, I chose to take it from her. So, and now once again, just making it real in the conversation, and I'm talking the conversation of a relationship. Now, if a man chooses to listen to his woman, it is still his decision, right? You cannot outsource that responsibility. Now, so that's where when I talk about being a man, if you choose to listen to the woman, you cannot say she decided. I mean, assuming that he, in that contract, he agrees to be the head of the house, he needs to be able to say, yes, I listened to her, but it was my choice to listen to her and take ownership of that decision. So to me, that's a man.
So being a man is actually what you were saying now is that whatever choice you make, just be accountable, be
Yeah.
accountable for your choices, and don't blame the other lah. But we'll talk about the women's role in another session. So yeah, I like this Adam and Eve debate. Coming
Yeah.
back to Cheryl say free will. There's a lot of comments. I'm going to read that shortly because they're amazing comments. Hang in there, Cheryl. Sinfong, thank you for joining us. Chi Sing is here. Don't play. So thank you very much.
Wow. Okay.
Nirmala, I hear you. Hang in there for a bit. And I think Gerald has become very, very famous with a few people, few women here. So while I put, so you see, just now when you said, so there was a lot of context about, romantic relationship and men and women in the context of marriage, right? Or a romantic relationship. So I'm going to park that, right? Because whenever we talk about being the man, I think ideally it is very nice if you meet a man. Now, before even I meet a man, I need to know what is it that I want. And a lot of what I want in my partner, in a man, is determined by my childhood.
Yep.
And it's determined by the experience of my childhood and the men and the women in my life.
Agreed. Yeah.
All right. So I just want to bring that when you talk about the men. I think sometimes there's a lot of stress or pressure on the men you go out with or marry, or the partner that you're talking about, where a lot of the damage or my shift in thinking actually happened in my childhood. Because if I had great role models in my childhood, in my family, in the way things were, that's where I'm mirroring and modeling. And I need to feel protected as a child first.
Yeah.
Because if I felt protected, then I know what am I going to look for in my man. But if I didn't feel protected, and a lot of women didn't feel protected, which is why we needed to be independent. We needed to be independent, right?
Yeah.
And our only way out was education. Now, then what happens is that when I then look for a man, I look for a man who then fulfills all the vacuum in my childhood.
Yeah, and I think the word vacuum is good, right? So if I may just add to that, for example, in the Asian culture, male are glorified a bit more than females, even in families. So in a family, the girls will need to do the cleaning up while the male boy, he does nothing, right? So if you are a lady growing up in that, when you become big, you're going to think, oh my goodness, if I'm going to get married, I'm going to serve him, and that scares the woman away, right? So you are right that a lot of this starts from our childhood, which is why I talk about values and beliefs. What are some of our beliefs? If the belief is that the man needs to feel superior. So let me give you an example. My mom keeps telling my daughter, "Can you please stop growing?" Because generally Asian men are intimidated by taller women. So she was like telling, "Don't grow so tall, Because when I say like that, next time very difficult. So what she means is it's difficult to get a man because a lot of males, generalize. Once again, it's generalizing. Males find it intimidated to marry a taller woman. So my mom said don't. But this goes back to upbringing, right? Where a lot of emphasis put on male. Once again, because in the past, and there's no blaming actually. There's no parents did wrong. It was just a natural progression that in the past, the role of the man was more important from a perspective of being a breadwinner, bringing things back home. And therefore, the male had more prominence. Now, in today's context, that's not true because women is able to do everything and more. I mean, they can give birth, men cannot. So they can literally do everything and more. But yet, the understanding of the male has not changed.
Yeah, but I'm not so. No, we may say if we look at a very simple context of Mother's Day and Father's Day, right?
Mm,
And traditionally, when men were the breadwinners, right?
yes.
When men, yeah, if you really think about it, the power was with the mother, seldom with the father, right? Right?
So the power of the mother was at home because back then. So once again, there's when I talk about role, right? There's role clarity. For the woman is to take care of the family back then,
Yeah.
right? Because the women was at home, and therefore the understanding was, I take care of the family, you bring the bacon home, and it was a clear contract. And my assumption is, if the men continued to do their role well, the equation would stay true. The problem is when the men start to falter, it changed then. So, for example, imagine I'm a systems guy, right? So, imagine if all the wheels in an engine are clicking together, nobody complains. But the minute one wheel start to wear off and it's not clicking in, it affects everything. So, in a family, when the male is what we call the primary driver from a systems perspective, if he is not doing things properly, then internally the wife and the children thing goes haywire. So which is why then the women try to bring equilibrium by trying to say, okay, I need to step up because I can't depend on my man anymore. He's not bringing in. I need to start doing something about it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, but I'm not too sure. So I agree with identity. I agree with you on identity. What I have issues with is whether people need to stay in their traditional roles, because that role was required for that time, right? Because, for example, I've met men who have hobbies which are associated to women because it started off that way and vice versa, right? And so for me it's very much what for me the transition has been great, because until you go out there and try other stuff, you don't know what you really enjoy, what you're good at, and how do you bring your strength out. But having said that, so for me, living in this current space is fantastic. I mean, I'm grateful that I didn't have to live my mother's life, right? Because I now get to choose which part which is associated to who I really am, and I get to express it as a woman, right? So I will never trade motherhood with anything. I love being a woman, and you can say I love getting dressed, right? So these are things I don't want to, and it will be different for every human, right? So I'm not too sure. Like for me, it won't make sense for me to say, if you tell me, I'm not sure what is the male thing that I like doing. I don't know. I don't like fixing things. I really don't like, right? I love cooking, which can be associated to a gender. But I've met men who love cooking, who love cleaning, and they're good at it. It doesn't affect their esteem, and that's fine. And I have female friends who do what is considered a male role, right? Which is fixing things and putting on the bulbs and all of that. But I think it is not the activity.
yeah.
It is not
So
the activity. It's not the form, but the intent and the meaning and how that brings about equilibrium in the relationship, and whichever relationship that is.
yeah,
All right.
fully
And there
agree with
are
that.
some things, sorry, there are some things that you cannot contract out. Like for the women, it'll be giving birth.
But currently, there's the science have allowed men to give birth, but that's a different story by itself.
Yeah, that's a different story
I
altogether, right?
think I'm starting to realize one of the things in our conversation. So when I say a role of a man, I'm not saying it's a gender.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's a role of a man, there's a role of woman in whatever co-creation they are in. So whether a male is in the man's role or a female in the man's role is for them to agree on, right? So that's where I'm coming from. The challenge is, once again, we tend to associate the role of a man has to be a male. I think that's the challenge. Because in
Okay.
today's situation, everybody's the same. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Nice, nice. So what I'm hearing from you is very simple. When two of you get together, and if you're that by gender, you're a man or a woman, look at your strength and see how do we bring the best of ourselves to the relationship for the benefit of the relationship. And Cheryl did say it's not about equality, it's about equity. Right? So it's how do you do that? And for you to do that, you need to communicate.
All
But
right.
before you can even communicate, you need to know your identity, what your values are, who you really are, and what matters to you, which is what you started with. Yes, Isaac, you want to add on something?
So one of the things that, I love the concept of working to your strength. I love Marcus Buckingham's work. I think one of the things that I'm also very mindful is you develop skills and strength according to the role that you need to perform. Right? So the whole idea of working to your strength is great because it builds confidence. But so you think for it. So let me use myself example. So in my relationship with my wife, so the role of the husband is I need to be leading, and therefore being assertive wasn't my strength. Being accommodating is. But in order for that equation to work, I needed to step up. And therefore, I needed to acquire the skill of being assertive. Was that my natural strength? I wouldn't say so. But that was my learned strength. So I think, so while behavior is good and working to strength is great, when you are in a for lack of better word, in a relationship or in a system. Sorry, I tend to use engineering words. When you are in a system, you need to know what role you're playing and you need to acquire the skills for that role. So in my context, it was very hard to get my wife to step down because she's more dominant. So to get her to step down, to downgrade is always harder than to upgrade. So, it's harder for her to become a bit more, okay, what do you want? But I had to step up in order to play the role that that is agreeable for both of us. And that is where the transition, that is where the challenge always is. So, for example,
Right.
yes, back to
No,
you.
but you see, if your wife didn't need that of you, if she was comfortable where she was, if she was comfortable making the decision, you won't have a need to step up.
Yes, agreed. So, for example, if she's dominant, I mean, she is dominant and I'm not. If the role is switched in the sense that she's totally okay being the breadwinner, she's totally okay driving the direction of family, then we would have gone into our most natural strength, which means I would
Exactly.
play the accommodation, I will be the one just being taking care of things. That wouldn't have been an issue. In that context, working to your strength is fine. But when
Yeah.
belief system comes into place, you need to check with your belief system because we tend to be doing things that we should be rather than what we believe is.
Mm, mm. Okay, because that's the other counter I wanted to give before I end it. Because when we talk about Gallup's strength, we are talking about, so you're talking about building strength according to the role. But, Gallup is also very clear. If you play to your natural strength and you build skills around your natural strength, that's where you excel. And that's where great performers are. That's what differentiates good to great, right? So if we can be in spaces where we can be ourselves, be authentic, right? And it is not we are almost undermining the power of a person who's accommodative.
No, I
Because
think where I'm coming from is now that is true when you are by yourself. So once again, the system of the community has to be able to accept you in that context, which is why we promote the whole idea, go to an organization that can accept you, right? But and this is where I kind of disagree. Like, in nowadays people move from one partner to another because they are looking for a partner to accept them. But if both person are like that, you'll never have the same partner. So that is where when you are in a system and the system is committed to everyone in the system, you learn to make adaptation to create harmony and balance in the system. Yeah.
yeah,
So as an individual, I agree. And personally, I do like Marcus Buckingham's work. I have nothing against it. But when you come to a system, there needs to be a collective agreement within whoever, stakeholder management, right? Within whoever in the system to say, okay, we are okay with you like that. Now, bringing this back to a man and woman, if the woman is totally okay being saying, I'm a driver, and the man is saying, okay, great, you are being driver, go ahead, then the equilibrium
yeah,
starts.
yeah, yeah. No, I think Marcus was good. I think the thing is this, right? We are assuming all of these things work in a perfect system, right? So when I get into a relationship, I already have my baggage. The assumption is I've left my baggage when I get into a relationship, which seldom happens. We only begin to uncover the baggage in the relationship. So, and that's why all the things that you are saying comes into place, because then you have to step up, you have to step down. You need to see what are the adjustments I need to make this work, so that we don't pass on more baggages through our children.
And in today's context, that can be quite a challenge, because if you are familiar, I mean, you are familiar with positive psychology, right? And I think one of the things that I'm fearing in today's context is this whole idea of we are okay, we have no issues, we just need to improve. In my opinion, sometimes makes self-reflection into areas I need to work on more difficult, because if I'm okay, then the other person needs to fix themselves. So, okay, that's another space by itself.
Yeah. So I'm not too sure where we are
Yeah.
getting at. I'm going to stop that. But
No
I'm
worries.
a fan of positive psychology. But you brought in two things that we talk about in terms of being whole, being me, because all of us are want to show up as authentic as we can be, but we can only be as authentic as we can be if there's a space where we are accepted as we are.
So you can be. So one of the things that, so for example, not every country should practice democracy. In fact, there was a talk given that how can a scholar and a paddy field farmer vote, because in a democracy system, everybody needs to have the same information. Now, bringing back to where I want to come from, um, oh, I forgot what I wanted to say. I'm so sorry about that.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Prepare
Yes.
your last line. Prepare your last line is 110. Okay.
All right. So I think for me, being a man means about having clarity of your role. What are you supposed to do? Being secure, knowing that you do have mistakes, you do have weaknesses, and it's not about saying I don't have weaknesses. It's about owning up to it. And thirdly, say sorry. If you make a mistake, just say sorry and move on. Yeah.
Thank you. And I think that applies to women as well. I don't
I
think
can't
it's
say
just
about that.
no, it is women as well. It's just the context might be slightly different
Yeah.
because of our the roles and gender we are in. So Isaac, thank you very much for not showing up as a male chauvinist as we expected you to. But I'm just going to just say hello and goodbye to a few people. I have rapid fire for you, so don't run away. You
Okay.
have a great fan in Cheryl Vita now. Gerald says hello. So there was a question. So Chi Sing says, it's about clarity. He also says that, he's cooking and he don't have issues with cooking. Fantastic, Chi Sing. We need people like you. Sin Fong Chan says, compromise. And he also brings out the fact that, with parents working, we tend to have these new challenges that we are having. And Nirmala says, she feels like she walked the walk that she's walking recently. So she related to the story that you are talking about. Sundaraj, thank you for coming. He says, nice to see job description set to family roles as husband, father. Fantastic. Gerald says, especially these days we complicate matters. Why compare? Or he said, don't compare. So Gerald says, why compare? Just be different, just be unique. Thank you, Gerald. Cheryl loves getting pregnant and having children. That's what she said. She just hit a second. Yeah. I love getting pregnant and having it. Okay, I'm not going to say anything about that. Sinful talks about men started business, so there's a lot of networking and workforce outside that domestic compound. Men to initiate conversation, that's the ideal world. So Nirmala doesn't believe men can do that. Okay.
It's possible.
I'm not sure if we have to send them for training to Isaac for sure. Sinfong says there's too much of emphasis placed on competitive age and leadership. I totally agree. Nirmala has a question, said, when you started initiating conversation in your marriage, how did things improve between you and your wife? You have got one sentence to answer that question. Otherwise, you connect with him. How did things improve when you started initiating conversation between you and your wife?
It's about understanding the unsaid through facilitated conversations. So, yeah, That's
So
the start.
it is to surface the unconscious stuff that you're holding, and that's the whole idea of having conversation. Once you surface it, you begin to understand that the issues that we are fighting about are not the actual issues we are fighting about, and we
Exactly.
uncover and we meet those needs, and we come together, and I suppose we heal, right? So thank you, Isaac. Are you ready for the rapid fire?
All right, sure.
Okay, nice. Guys, thank you so much. For all the new people who joined us, the questions were amazing. Oh, I like Sundar saying, very good analysis, men trying to prove as a man. But there's also a lot of pressure on men that we need to address, because we are addressing the women and we're not addressing the real issues with men. And I think that's the part of the conversation that we're trying to bring in. And Isaac, thank you for being so clear and articulate about your thoughts. Not only you hold men responsible, but I think what you're doing also is that you're helping us to transition clearly and well. So thank you very much. Now this session is known as Being Whole, Being Me, and we are on series 29. What does it mean to being man in the current times, right? So finish this sentence, Isaac. Being whole as a man means.
Being whole as a man means being whole as a man means being secure.
Nice. You probably answered this. Being me. Being
Pardon?
me. Being me. M-E.
Okay.
Being me, right?
Uh-huh.
As a man, being me
All right.
in today's world. Finish the sentence.
Being me as a man in today's world is about loving my loved ones.
Oh, right. Being vulnerable to a man today is.
Acknowledging what he doesn't know.
Wow. And if I'm not a breadwinner today.
If I'm not a breadwinner today, I would be doing carpentry work in the back.
Nice. And the most difficult pain of being a man in today's world might be?
The most difficult pain being a man today is being misunderstood.
Tell us more.
Being misunderstood because there are things that a man needs to do because he probably has some foresight about what's going to happen and therefore needs to push through the pain, the short-term pain, in order for the long-term gain. And sometimes you have to just be misunderstood until you see the light. Then people will say, "Oh my goodness, I was thankful that you did that previously."
Nice, thanks. Last one. What can we do to men to support men being men in today's world?
To have support systems, to have group where men can come and share their challenges without the women around. Yeah.
Oh, but how do we then come to know how to deal with the men?
No, you don't need to know how to deal with the man. The man needs to deal with himself first.
I love you, Isaac. Thank you so much. So thank you very much for answering the question. I love the rapid fire answers. Man, here, Isaac, get together and get to know yourself so that we can have a better time as women.
My wife gave me this cup.
Thank you, Isaac. So for all those who have joined us, thank you for joining us in Being Whole, Being Me. We've been talking to Isaac Peter, who does work around leadership, and you know why he's so good at it, because first man lead himself, and we don't mean your gender. So with that, thank you for joining us. Until I see you next week again. Isaac, would you like to say goodbye before we get you off the screen and I make the announcement for
Thank you so much, everyone. And please feel free to comment in terms of your thoughts. Would love to hear what you ladies and men think about what we did today.
Nice. And connect with Isaac both on Facebook and LinkedIn. You have his connection here. Otherwise, we'll put it up later. Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to say bye to Isaac. And with that, so thank you very much for joining us. I know it was a little bit longer, but it was an interesting topic. Next week, we have a very, very interesting guest coming in. And it is health related. You might enjoy it. So stay tuned. Join us again next week at 12 o'clock, same time, same place. This is Malar from Hearts and Minds signing off. Stay safe and have a great week ahead.